and I won. It was a little controversial because they're no-bake cookie. Hello and welcome to my channel, Haylee Marie Vintage. Today, I, as always, have a sewing project, but this one has a little bit of a twist. So this is in collaboration with Serena. I'll link her channel down below. And what we're doing is we're each making our own apron, as well as a cookie recipe. There are a lot of different apron patterns out there, so it should be really quite fun. So let's dive into it. I have this bag here. No, it's not from Sephora. Everything in it is from Joann's. I mean, it is from Sephora, the bag itself, but not the stuff in it. So this is my pattern here. This is a pretty cute girly apron. It has some embroidery details that I'm planning on embroidering myself. It has the transfer in it and all that. The gathered skirt and bib are joined in a shaped waistband to which a back cross shoulder straps are buttoned. Tie ends form a sash. Shaped pockets and trim in front. Bias fold tape outlines bib and pockets. Hold up, Spooky is trying to, yeah, okay, here you go. She's stranded over there with where the flower vase is. That is what this apron is. I'm pretty excited about it. I have not made an apron. I've been meaning to make an apron, so Serena's challenge was the perfect time. And like I said, I really like looking at aprons visually, so I'm pretty pumped. So that is a scoop for the pattern. This is the fabric I'm working with. It's just a couple of yards of this like pinky purpley fabric. I was gonna go and match the exact like illustration on the pattern and do pink with blue, but then I decided to do a little twist on it and I decided to do this purple with, I got a bunch of like really bright blue bias tape. I don't know how easily you can tell through the packaging, but it's like brighter than my hair blue. Then I also got that reflected in embroidery thread. That is the plan for the fabrics for this. I think this should be pretty easy. I'm hoping it'll be like a 3-hour make, but we will figure that out at the end when we do our whole total. Oh, you coming back? Do you need help again? And then for my cookie recipe, I'm going to make a recipe that's been in my family for I don't know how long. It's from my grandma's cookbook, and they're a no-bake cookie. I don't bake, so I needed to find something that worked well for me, and not to brag or anything, but these cookies won my Works cookie contest a few years back. So that is the plan for all the different makes today. We're gonna first start by making the apron because I will wear the apron to make the cookies, logically. And so with that, we are gonna go ahead and hop into cutting out the fabric. And here I am laying out those pattern pieces, and everything here is really quite easy. There is no nap, there is no pattern, it is all solid. So I can just kind of lay out the pieces in whatever ways I want, which is incredibly nice. So that is what I'm doing here. It was a little bit tight, so I did have some things to figure out, but all in all, it wasn't that bad. Also, ignore the fact that you can see a big slip sticking out of the back of my pants. I was wearing a skirt and I wanted to cut in jeans so I didn't have to think about not flashing people, and I was too lazy to take off the blouse that was under everything. So yeah, this is the vibe you're getting. It is what it is. It's a choice. Anyway, back to cutting. Like I said, nothing really special about this, and we're just going to go ahead and wrap it up and hop into our first check-in. All right, folks, we're quite a bit later. Today we're finally sewing the apron. It is the day after fall back time. So I forgot that once fall back time happens, the sun sets here at like 4:30, which is always neat. So I only have like 6 hours to work on this because I really do prefer sewing in daylight. It is 10:45. I've read through the directions a few times. It looks pretty straightforward. I'm not like hugely concerned about anything. I just think it'll just be time. And I'll also have to hand embroider, and I want to have this done before I make cookies. Yesterday I was supposed to go foraging, but I was feeling a little bit under the weather and I wasn't quite sure like if it was allergies or being sick, so I stayed home and I just kind of relaxed. I think today it was definitely just me feeling a little bit under the weather allergy wise, so I'm feeling much better today. Still a little blocked up in my ears and in my throat, but otherwise we're doing well. That is, I guess, the summary of everything going on. After I film this video, I have a sewing break on film for about a month. I'll probably sew things off film. We're just gonna try to get through it. I do plan on doing the embroidery part in the dark, and I also realized I really overbought on bias tape for this project, which is a whoops, but what can you do? We're just gonna go ahead and hop straight into the sewing. So first I will work on seaming up the skirt of the apron. This is pretty straightforward. There's nothing very complicated here. So first I am just pinning everything down, and then after that I sew them together, and then I'm going ahead and pinking as my seam finish here since this is a pretty dense cotton, and then we are moving on to the next step. So it basically tells you to narrow hem the side seams, or they're not really the side seams, but the end of the sides. So here I am just sewing it down after folding it up, and then I will fold it over again, and this will enclose all the raw seams. With the skirt assembled, I am doing a quick just once turn over hem on the bottom. This will eventually be turned over again, but for now I just wanted to have this done so that way this edge is finished when I do eventually put on the final hem. And then to continue to wrap up all this sewing, I am real quick just putting in all of the gathering stitches for the eventual gathering of this skirt. Again, on my channel I like to do 3 rows of gathering stitches. It's just the way I can get it done to be the nicest it'll be with the least amount of thinking. And then here I am working on these pockets. You'll notice I made a big mistake here, and you will notice that in just a few short minutes or seconds. But first I am just starting by folding the edges that will eventually be sewn down. And now we're doing a major focus shift. Here I am working on the bib. I'm just trying to get both pieces to the point where I can bias bind them at the same time, so that way I don't have to change my machine threads a bunch of times. So here I am pinning together the apron ties that will go on the top of the bib. And then after I have these stitched, I am just going ahead and I am turning the fabric. I've gotten pretty fast at this. And then once I get the straps turned, I'm going to go ahead and press them. Here I am pinning the straps to where they go. And then I'm quickly basting them down. And now we're getting pretty close to the bias. So I'm real quick ironing the bias tape here in this beautiful kind of pool Caribbean blue color. I usually don't pin bias tape, but here I am going ahead and I am pinning it because there are some really weird curves on this bib, and I'm trying to make it so those go a little bit smoother. And then I am just stitching that down. I am being lazy right here just because I haven't changed my thread color yet, because it doesn't matter because it's kind of on the inside. And then here I am navigating all of these curves. This is quite challenging. A challenge is always a good thing. It pushes you and makes you grow. I'm not sure I have ever gotten doing a bias tape corner well. I probably just need to Google how to do it better. And now I've finally changed my thread color for stitching down on the top. And so we are doing some bright blue thread, and we are just again stitching on the front side, stitching along the edge to finish this bias tape. And now here is where my mistake, I figure out I made it, I guess. I have bias etched the wrong part of the pocket. The top part of the pocket should actually be the longer diagonal. So I've now made a pocket with a thin opening that's big and full in the rest of the pocket. Kind of an awkward choice, but it is what it is. So I'm just gonna roll with it. I was way too lazy to redo these. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pin them down with the best approximation I can. And they'll just be kind of a weird shaped pocket, but they'll still be functional, so that's fine. I will also, though, as a result, have to figure out how to put the embroidery things on, because it is such a weird now shape, and it's not the shape the embroidery expects it to be. So we have a few things to figure out still. Now I'm going ahead and I am finalizing or locking in my mistake by sewing down the pocket. Like I said, it's not a huge deal. It's just definitely a minor inconvenience. And now with the bib and the skirt mostly done, it is time to turn my attention to the waistband. So first it has you fold this for your waistband, and then you're going to go ahead and make a really narrow hem all the way around. Straps isn't the right term, whatever you would call these, the ties. I think these are the back ties. So you're going to go ahead and make a narrow hem around the perimeter of the back here. And here I'm just actually taking care of that sewing. And here I am now going ahead and I'm working with these transfers. So there's a whole bunch of different transfers on here, depending on the pattern you're using. So I just had to find the right one for the bib and cut that out, as well as find the ones for the pockets. Mistake number 2, not cutting off the writing. This will come back and bite me later too. We're not doing well with the pockets, but it's fine. And then I am going ahead and I'm figuring out how to position it on my screwed up pockets. I think I ended up making it work, but yeah, this was definitely all just kind of goofy and whoops. You can only do so much. Sometimes you make a mistake and you realize it and then you don't correct it and you dig yourself further in a hole. It's totally fine. So here I am just figuring out the positioning of this before putting on my iron to transfer it down. This didn't make as dark of a transfer as I expected. I was kind of frustrated by this actually. So I ended up having to trace it on the window after putting it on iron wise. As you can see, that's not exactly a complete transfer. But before I go back and face my mistakes, I'm going to go ahead and work on finishing up the apron. So here I am positioning everything to be ready to be sewn down. So this is interesting because you're kind of sewing in like a rectangle around things, and that will catch both the bib and the ties. But it does mean you have a bunch of stuff like sitting inside where you can't see it, and you're kind of blind sewing it and hoping you don't screw it up and accidentally sew through something you shouldn't. I can now breathe a sigh of relief. I did not get any of these sewn in a way they shouldn't have been. Everything is going well here. And so my next step here is just to iron this down. And then I am also supposed to press up the bottom of this by like a ½ inch or something like that, because this will eventually kind of be what sandwiches the gathering in between, which you'll see in just a few seconds. Before we can make that sandwich, I need to first sew it to the back side. So here, I'm just doing kind of the normal thing. I have ironed this, but the ironing is a little bit less important. In this case, we're just making sure all of the gathers are gathered down and ready to fit into the amount left inside the apron. So I am just pinning that in, and then I'm going to go ahead and sew it down. Luckily, sewing this was pretty straightforward, so not too bad. After folding it all nicely, I am now pinning it down into its little gathered sandwich. So I think I just kind of eyeballed this. There weren't a ton of markings here, so I kind of just had to make whatever work, and I am just, like I said, pinning these all down. And now I'm just going to go ahead and top stitch that down, and besides the embroidery, we are mostly done with the apron. So I had gotten a GoPro, and I thought it would be interesting to see how embroidery footage looks on it. The answer is, for some reason, it looks kind of grotesque. So we are not going to use the GoPro, but I thought I would give you this little behind the scenes grotesque embroidery footage. But let's jump into the real footage. While I do actually have a decent background in embroidery, it's been a really long time, like a few years. I feel like embroidery was kind of like my gateway drug to sewing, so it took me a little bit to get my muscle memory back of how I actually embroidered. I did get it, and it did start to work, but it did take a little bit of time. But once I got it, it was pretty quick. I definitely have never forgotten how to French knot because I love French knots. I think this is a stem stitch or something like that. I never even really got the hang of it to start with, but I do feel like because I sew more now, I definitely understood it better. This is not the best embroidery work you will ever see, but I also don't think it was the worst, and I do look forward to probably bringing in a few more embroidered elements into future projects. I will say, because I was on a bit of a time crunch with this, I didn't enjoy it as much as possible, but if I had all the time planned for embroidery, I think I would have really enjoyed this. But because this was an apron, I just kind of wanted to get it done. We got the hang of it, it was good. And with that, we have finished the apron, so we're now gonna jump into the kitchen where you'll see it in action. Alrighty, we're ready to make the cookies. I don't know that I'm gonna do a full reveal. Here, you can see the embroidery work I did. The lighting here isn't great. There's nothing I can do about it. It's very full. I'm wearing a very full skirt. It's pretty cute. I'm impressed is a strong word, but I'm not unhappy with this apron. I will have my final thoughts on this apron in the wrap up, but I did enjoy getting back to embroidery. I also have like the pockets here. There it goes. I think the bib embroidery turned out the best. I did it last because I knew that it would probably be the best of the bunch. But anyway, we are ready to make cookies. So this cookie recipe has been in my family for I don't know how long. It was my grandma's recipe, I think. It's a no-bake cookie. I don't bake, so baking a cookie wouldn't really work for me here. It only has 5 ingredients, so pretty easy. And you just need a bowl and a food processor or a rolling pin. You don't need a food processor. You could also just sub it for other things. I just am lazy. But yeah, it's pretty easy. I just have powdered sugar. I have coconut. Flaked coconut. I have walnut baking pieces, and then I have vanilla wafers, which is a key ingredient. And last, I have frozen orange juice that's been thawed. You need about half a can. I'll give all the measurements as I actually get into making these cookies. In our family, we call these orange balls. We don't have a better name. And this cookie recipe actually won my office party thing a few years ago where we did a bake-off, and I won. It was a little controversial because they're no-bake cookie. However, because they were really unique in flavor, everyone remembered them and therefore voted for them. There were a lot of like sugar cookies, a lot of like Kringle cookies, things like that. And this one was super memorable. I figured I would teach you how to make this today. So we're gonna hop right into it. I haven't made these by myself before, so I've made them only with my whole family before. So this will be an adventure for me and for you. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the apron. With that, let's go ahead and hop in. So I went ahead and I did a food processor for the vanilla wafers. As a kid, we always put them in a bag and we like meat tenderized them. This was much easier and much preferred. This is my immersion blender slash food processor and I really like it. So I'll link it down below in case you're interested in it. I like it. It has a lot of different functions. I use it for food processing, smoothies, and immersion blending. So it's a pretty nifty little device that I really like having, especially with my kitchen being so small. And as a kid, it was this dumb chopper thing that you like pushed and it like would chop the nuts. It would like have a blade go down and it was such a pain in the butt. Food processor, much easier. Wow, astounding. And the nuts are more fine. So highly recommend using a food processor for this recipe. It really shortened it by probably like 20 minutes. So once I have all the ingredients poured in, I am just mixing this by hand. It's kind of gross, but it's fine. I did have my camera not work for the pouring in of the orange juice and the powdered sugar and the coconut, which is really neat, but it was a cup of each of those besides the can of orange juice, which I think was a whole can. So yeah, we're just mixing it away. You're just trying to get it to be kind of consistent. Here I'm taking a little sneaky taste of it because it's delicious. The problem with no-bake cookies is if you do that, you then have to go and wash your hands immediately, especially because we are just, you know, having a little bit of a pandemic season this season. So washing your hands is super important on this recipe. But here is where you put the most time in. I think these cookies honestly took me 20 minutes total, but here you're just kind of eyeballing them and you're rolling them into a ball and then rolling those in powdered sugar so they look cute. So that's what I'm doing here. What I would say about these is you do not want these to be too big. They're kind of a lot in a bite, so it's ideal that they're little, probably like a tablespoon, maybe a tablespoon and a half per cookie. Normally I'm against making cookies smaller. However, I think in this case it's a good call just because you could eat as many as you want anyway. Like on these, you can have them be kind of uneven rather than when you actually bake cookies, you need them to be fairly even. So yeah, we're just gonna go ahead and make these and they're, like I said, these are really easy and super tasty. If you do end up trying this recipe, you'll have to let me know since it is a family favorite. I thought I'd put in a little time-lapse high speed of me stacking up all these cookies, and I think it's kind of funny how they like shrink into each other. But with that, let's just go ahead and jump straight into the outro. All right, we have wrapped everything up. You've seen the cookies, you've seen the apron. Now let's start talking project budget. I'm not doing a budget for the cookies because they took me about 15 minutes to make, and food is just all over the place, fluctuating, so I just didn't want to dive into that, honestly. However, I do have my usual spreadsheet for the apron, so we're gonna go through that real quick. So the fabric for this was pretty cheap. It was $7.70. That seems really cheap, but that's what this says, so I guess that's how much it was. Seems suspicious though. And then the notions were $8.21. That's the bias tape, the embroidery floss, and the thread. So that is what is included in that notions for this pattern. And then the pattern itself is, as always, the most expensive part. It was $28.67. It was a really cute pattern. I like how this apron turned out, so that worked just fine for me. So that brings us to supplies totals of $44.58. Honestly, for a really nice apron with hand embroidery, I think that's a great price. I'm not gonna be making a ton of aprons, and so I'm gonna probably use this one for a really long time. So I think that's a good price for me. However, we have not talked about the labor yet. For the labor, this took me about what it takes to make a dress. This took me 8 hours. I thought an apron would be kind of like a quick, short, like whip it out project, and it definitely wasn't. So as always on this channel, we multiply that 8 hours by $25 an hour, which is about what a seamstress makes here in Seattle, to get the total of $200. So with labor, this would be $244.58. So a very expensive apron, but just there's a lot of different bits that go into an apron. I mean, without the hand sewing, the apron itself only took me about 3 hours 45 minutes to make. It was putting in the hand embroidery that took 4 hours and 15 minutes. That really was that extra. So I guess if you didn't hand embroider, you would be in better shape. But that is it for the budget. And now I'm sitting on my apron, I guess. Okay, let's talk about this good boy. I don't know. Here it is. So as always, we start with kind of the things that I'm maybe not so stoked on. The markings, the like something bib is what it says. They like didn't wash off. They were supposed to be water soluble. I've already washed this twice and they did not come out. So I guess I'll just have that here. Luckily it's an apron, so it's fine. It may also still exist on the pockets. The other thing with the apron is I had to do kind of a rigged fix here. Hopefully you can see that here. So I actually had to fold the bib and like sew it down back here because the bib was way too long. Like this would have been tied right around like the largest part of my hips if I hadn't shortened the bib. I had to shorten it by 3 inches, or the bib would like be like this, which was not what I wanted. I just thought that was interesting. I was not necessarily expecting that. I will say I feel like this apron has really good coverage for a dress since it goes all the way around the back, and it is really cute. I definitely will wear this apron. I just am not a like apron as a fashion statement person. Like I feel like there's people who wear aprons with their vintage out and about and it looks really cute on them. I just feel like I'm not like putting a skirt and like putting an outfit together is hard enough for me without throwing an apron on top of it. So it's just like not really something I'm interested in doing. So this will very much be like a functional apron, and I don't think you'll probably see me make an apron on this channel again. I'm really glad I made one. I have wanted to make an apron for a while. You know, I hadn't gotten around to it, and like I said, an apron was not like top on my list to do. For an apron, it's very cute, and I will, I'm sure, get plenty of use out of it. I need to get better about cooking with an apron on in general. I don't wear vintage when I cook though. I only wear like my like workout stuff because of that. I do think this apron turned out really cute. I'm really pleased with the embroidery. I do think it could be like neater or nicer or whatever. I think it's cute, and it was good to like refresh my brain with the embroidery. Like that was a lot of fun for me. And then of course the cookies came out amazing. I have the recipe down below, and then you can watch the video for instructions. It's pretty straightforward and they're delicious, and it's gonna take a lot of my self-control to not eat all of them. Again, this is a part of a collaboration with Serena, and so definitely check out their video. And a huge thank you to Serena for putting this together. This was a really fun exercise for me, and I really like these cookies, and my family doesn't make them very much anymore, so it was nice to make them for myself and get to enjoy this part of the year. And yeah, it was good to finally get around to making an apron since I've always wanted to. And with that, I'm gonna sign off, and I'm going to see you next week. Bye!